Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey. I'm the founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, the Blended Podcast, and founder of the Blended Pledge. And I'm excited to once again be partnering with the team at SDI. I've interviewed a few incredible SDI leaders on Let's Talk Supply Chain. So go and check out episodes 378, 391, and 411 if you want an extra dose of SDI content after the show. And today I'm joined by Miriam for a deep dive into how we tackle purchasing's number one threat, inflation. Now, Miriam is the vice president of cooperative purchasing at SDI, and she has over 15 years experience in strategic partnerships and business development. Known for her ability to develop customized solutions, Miriam has successfully driven revenue growth and strengthened market presence in multiple organizations prior to SDI. So she is the perfect person to reveal some key strategic insights for us today. And we're actually going to be doing things just a little bit differently. To kick us off, Miriam is going to present an incredible keynote speech for us, all about addressing inflationary pressures through strategic cost management and cooperative purchasing in MRO and tail spend. I'll be listening alongside with you, soaking it all in, and then we're going to come back together and discuss Miriam's presentation afterwards. So we want to hear from you as well. We'll be having a Q&A after the keynote. So please post all of your questions into the comments and we will get to as many as we can later on. And I know that I can count on all of you to come up with some good probing questions. So now it's time to bring up Miriam. Miriam, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great, great. Well, we're super excited to have you. And I think what we'll do is just turn it over to you for this presentation. And I will see you back here in about 20 minutes. So over to you, Miriam.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for letting me come on Let's Talk Supply Chain with you today. As she said, my name is Miriam Ashore. I am the vice president with SDI's Digital Supply Chain and their Cooperative Initiative Program. And today, next slide, please, let's talk about what's on our agenda. So what we're going to talk about are some critical topics that are shaping our industry. We're going to start off by examining the current inflationary landscape and its impact on supply chain. We're going to follow that by discussing strategic management approaches and advocating for broader changes in our procurement practices. And we'll also delve into cooperative purchasing as a powerful tool for driving supply chain efficiencies. And then finally, we're going to conclude with key takeaways that have actionable steps that you can implement in your organizations. So next slide, please. So as we take a closer look at the economy right now, it's evident that we're facing unprecedented challenges that are reshaping both procurement strategies and operations. Particularly, we're seeing it in MRO and indirect spend categories. So first, let's talk about the persistent inflation, the number one topic. Globally, inflation rates have surged to levels not seen in decades. So with consumer price index rising by 8% in many countries over the past few years, it's truly impacting supply chain. And domestically, we have seen slight improvements, but inflationary pressures continue to affect costs across the board. If you could go back to that one slide, perfect, across the board. And some of the factors that are driving these costs can be production costs and volatility in commodity prices. And next, when we talk about resource scarcity, a survey from the Institute for Supply Chain Management revealed that over 75% of companies are experiencing supply chain disruptions due to material shortages. And then finally, geopolitical disruptions are adding a layer of complexity. So the Global Trade Alert reports that 1,300 trade restrictive measures were implemented globally in just the past year, rising trade tensions and conflicts. which have immediate and far-reaching effects on supply chains, making it essential for us to remain agile and very well informed. Next slide, please. Perfect. So let's take a closer look at some of the key statistics that illustrate the economic challenges that we're facing today. Starting with inflation and rising costs, recent data indicates that 49% of organizations are reporting significant impacts in inflation, with 62% experiencing rising costs across their supply chain. And then moving to the geopolitical instability, we can see that 41% of the companies are facing disruptions due to geographical or geopolitical factors, and this is including everything from trade wars to regional conflicts. And additionally, 53% of organizations recognize the urgent need to prioritize risk management in their procurement strategies. Last, within supply chain disruptions, 36% of businesses are actively adjusting their sourcing strategies in response to these challenges, while 22% are reporting increased costs due to supply chain disruptions. So these statistics underscore that our industry is at a critical juncture, highlighting the importance of proactive strategies to navigate today's complex economic landscape. Next slide, please. Perfect. So reflecting on those statistics, we can see the urgent need for resilient procurement practices. Efficient MRO management is critical for the health of our supply chains. Yet finding a cost-effective solution has been a significant challenge for most procurement leaders. And when we look at escalating costs in MRO and indirect spend categories, maintenance parts are experiencing double-digit price increases. And factors driving these costs include rising service contract expenses due to those labor shortages and surging energy and utility costs. So these impact operations significantly, and their expenses show it. Next, when we balance cost control with strategic initiatives, it's vital to focus on this. There's pressure to reduce spending without sacrificing quality. And we must continue to invest in innovation and sustainability despite the budget constraints we see. Finally, there is increased scrutiny on procurement performance. Stakeholders are demanding transparency and accountability from the procurement leaders. This results in a much greater focus on how your procurement decision impacting the company or organization overall. An example is that CFOs are becoming much more involved in procurement decisions, which is highlighting their expectation for you to do more with less of a budget. Next slide, please. We can pass that one, sorry. Next slide, please. Perfect. So as we're navigating inflationary pressures, effective cost management and strategic sourcing are essential for maintaining a competitive advantage and your operational efficiency. First, we have to balance those short-term savings with your long-term value in your organization. While we know immediate cost reductions are very important to your organization, but it's critical that these efforts don't compromise the future growth or innovation. And according to a recent survey by Deloitte, 80% of procurement leaders believe that long-term value is just as important as that immediate savings, which is highlighting the need for a very balanced approach. Next, leveraging data for informed decision-making is essential. So research from Gardner shows that organizations that adopt a data-driven decision-making approach are 5 times more likely to be able to make faster decisions than their competitors. And last, visibility with procurement platforms. A study by the Hackett Group found that companies with strong procurement visibility can reduce their costs by 10 to 20%, which is significant. Next slide, please. So, to achieve effective cost management in today's environment, we must adopt sophisticated, data driven frameworks. These prioritize our efforts and they maximize our impacts. So, prioritizing spend areas is important, and by analyzing our expenditures, we can identify where to focus our resources for the greatest return. An example of this is addressing tail spend, which is critical for maximizing your procurement effectiveness. Research indicates that tail spend can account for up to 20% of your total spend, yet it's often overlooked. In addition, with all the categories within MRO, understanding how much of your spend is truly repeatable spend year over year is important. What we've seen in the data, which has been consistent, is that around 20 to 40% of total spend is your repeatable year over year spend. But the other half within the MRO is not repeatable. So understanding that spend helps you make much more effective decisions. And by identifying and managing those expenditures, then you can unlock significant savings and improve your overall budget management. Next, when developing a savings pipeline, it will allow you to outline savings opportunities and create a roadmap for your implementation. Tracking savings is very important. It's a little easier on your recurring spend, but on the non-recurring spend, it's critical to have a plan in place that ensures that those items are effectively sourced and not automatically driven to just one supplier. Last, continuous monitoring. It's not just critical, it is vital to your organization. The economic landscape is constantly changing. So by regularly reviewing your strategies, it will help you be responsive to any new developments that are out there or market changes. In the face of these challenges, we need to start exploring innovative solutions like cooperative purchasing. Next slide, please. One more. Yeah, perfect. So cooperative purchasing is a very powerful strategy to help mitigate the rising costs of supply chain and improve your procurement efficiency. What it is a collaborative procurement method where multiple organizations pool together their buying power that helps secure better terms and better prices. There is a key distinction between cooperative purchasing and group purchasing organizations. Cooperative purchasing is much more member-centric, meaning that members have the governance and the say, while a group purchasing organization, or GPO, acts as a third-party facilitator. In cooperative purchasing, member organizations are the decision makers, which fosters a much deeper sense of collaboration. So, what is cooperative purchasing? It's a procurement method that's carried out on behalf of multiple public entities. The core advantage of leveraging the collective purchasing power of all the members in the organization in cooperative purchasing is to be able to access pre-negotiated contracts that have much more favorable terms than you could probably do individually and on your own. Key benefits of cooperative purchasing start off by access to immediate cost savings through the volume discounts in cooperative purchasing. You have reduced administrative workload and faster procurement cycles. It's great to have the access to expertise and best practices across peer and participating organizations. And finally, full compliance and procurement regulations mean avoiding legal and operational risks for your organization. So for MRO and tail spend, cooperative purchasing is ideal. It helps streamline your procurement for standardization of commonly purchased items while managing that fragmented spend across various suppliers. This is very advantageous for those organizations that have limited procurement resources and who might struggle to negotiate those favorable terms by themselves. Next slide, please. Deeper look into the cooperative purchasing benefits would be The purchasing is especially evident when you're looking at MRO and tailspin categories because you get immediate cost savings, which could be significant. The volume discounts provide access to anywhere from 15 to 20%, which is much better than individually negotiated pricing, while it helps reduce transaction costs, which also enhances your savings. And moreover, duplication of contracts and onboarding process is eliminated, meaning you have much smoother supplier management. And when we look at it from operational efficiency perspective, procurement cycles are shortened by up to 75%, allowing for quicker turnarounds. And cooperative purchasing also standardizes products and services, which helps organizations with inventory management and demand forecasting. And by providing easier access to pre-approved suppliers, it significantly reduces that maverick spend in your organization. So cooperative purchasing also offers access to unique resources that maybe you weren't thinking about. Member organizations in a cooperative purchasing program benefit from the collective expertise of their peers. They gain insights into market trends, emerging technologies, and best practices. Additionally, cooperative purchasing provides access to specialized categories that may otherwise be difficult to individually source. Next slide, please. So once you've seen success with cooperative purchasing, it can act as your springboard for a broader procurement transformation in your organization. First, consider expanding your scope by identifying additional categories that would benefit from cooperative purchasing. While MRO is a perfect fit for cooperative purchasing, other categories that you may not think about, like professional services or IT or security services, also present opportunities for your organization. And you can even internally form mini small cooperatives to enhance and streamline this procurement process even more. But establishing a center of excellence dedicated to cooperative purchasing can help ensure long-term success through your organization. So a dedicated team or a committee can help optimize the processes. They can establish your best practices, and then they can provide training, information transfer, and education to your key stakeholders within the organization. And this will help to ensure that cooperative purchasing becomes a core part of your procurement strategy. And last, by leveraging data, you can track your savings and operational improvements much more effectively. You want to use data analytics to identify new trends, continuously benchmark your performance against industry standards, and help you stay competitive as an organization. Next slide, please. Gaining executive buy-in is essential for driving those lasting changes in procurement practices. So to gain leadership support, focus on presenting clear and quantifiable ROI, highlight both your hard and your soft savings, and demonstrate how these initiatives positively impact key financial metrics within your organization, such as your EBITDA and working capital. Additionally, emphasize how the cooperative purchasing enhances supply chain resilience and helps you mitigate those risks. Like we said, maverick spend. It's also important to align these initiatives with your organization's broader strategic objectives. Cooperative purchasing doesn't just save your organization money, it contributes to sustainability and social responsibility and improved competitive advantage. It's about more than just your cost savings. It's about creating a stronger and much more resilient organization. Lastly, when building that compelling business case for your executive leadership, use data visualization to clearly communicate the current state and the future potential of your procurement transformation. You want to present a phased approach with milestones and outcomes, and back your case with industry benchmarks and success stories from competitors that show your leaders what is possible. Next slide, please. So as we conclude, here are the key points to remember when addressing inflationary pressures. Through strategic cost management and cooperative purchasing, think about this. First, leverage data-driven strategies to combat inflationary pressures. Use your spend analytics to find opportunities and continually adjust your approach to meet industry or market demands. Second, cooperative purchasing offers immediate savings. So take advantage of the volume discounts and the pre-negotiated contracts and tap into that shared expertise within the cooperative. Third, you want to use your initial success in cooperative purchasing to drive broader, stronger procurement transformation within your organization. Expand it into new categories and establish that center of excellence for long-term sustainability. Next, stay agile by continuously innovating and adapting to market changes. Invest in technology, invest in skills development to keep your procurement practices sharp and strong. And then finally, secure your executive buy-in by demonstrating the clear ROI, aligning strategic objectives with the organization, and present that compelling data-driven business case for transformation. So thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you found this presentation impactful.
Yes, and we're going to get to questions now, everybody. I've got half a page of things that I want to talk to you about, Miriam. And I know that our audience probably has a bunch of questions for you, but some of the words I wanted to point out was repeatable spend. I really liked that one. Cooperative and collaborative. I was going to ask you because like collaboration is one of the words that I use all the time. And when I first saw the cooperative, I was like, you're speaking my language, we're talking collaboration, but they're not quite the same, are they?
So, you know what? They're one and the same together, but they're a bit different. And when you look at collaboration in the cooperative, if we talk about it that way, the cooperative just pulls everybody together that says, I just can't do this on my own. I can't take advantage of these bigger companies, of what they can do. So within the cooperative, we work collaboratively with not just the people that are members of the cooperative, but also the suppliers. It makes the suppliers more resilient and it makes the members much more resilient. So the collaboration between the two is essential. So we're not just negotiating contracts for members with suppliers. We're saying we need to partner. We need to have a strategy together.
Right. And one of the other words that you used was maverick spend. Is that like when people go rogue?
Yeah, that's basically it. I love it. Call it rogue. Yeah, that is maverick spend. So within certain organizations, maybe you have more than one plant or one warehouse that you manage. You manage that. It's like having one child versus 3 children, right? So you can manage that. You know what they're doing. You have your eyes open. But there are times when spend happens, emergencies happen, things like that. And that's maverick. They get to go and make their own choices. Doesn't matter if they give it to supplier A, supplier B, supplier C. But when you can control the negotiated pricing and access to supplies, you can control that maverick spend and say, we know where you can get it. Let's all go to the same place. And now I have the data behind it because it's streamlined with one supplier as well.
Right. Okay, I love that. Now I want to say hi to Eric over on my personal LinkedIn. Again, everybody, if you've got questions, make sure to put them in the comments, but I'm going to get to my questions first. So I think that presentation was definitely fascinating. You covered a bunch of different areas and topics. So let's dive a little bit deeper. Now, you mentioned a range of challenges and impacts. What would you say are your clients' top 3 that are kind of keeping them up at night?
So I think part of the reason I put them in the presentation, because I think those are super important, the inflation that we saw, which was unexpected. That's very, very big. And then we went through that time of resource scarcity and the geopolitical pressures. So when you put that all together, what happens is now organizations need to come up with a new resilient procurement strategy. They need to have it diversified more than they did before. Those three factors affect them the most, which has made them have to reevaluate what they're doing, come together. Now they're absolutely analyzing their data a lot more so they can be proactive in the market instead of reactive.
And so I know the title that we've called this particular discussion, inflation is purchasing's number one threat. Why is that number one?
Most companies have their strategic plans, their operational budgets, and when inflation skyrocketed
Uh-huh.
compared to what was forecasted, trying to navigate around that and stay within the budget limitations was the largest challenge for the procurement team, for all the procurement leaders. They have the expectations they have to meet with their leadership, but it was very difficult for them to source accordingly and planned sourcing when inflation did what it did to everybody over the last few years.
Well, and especially when they have to look at different sources, like they need to diversify their sourcing
Yes.
as well. I'm sure that sort of adds to that challenge because you don't really know when you're going into that relationship what those costs and everything will look like. And they could look very different today as they would have maybe 6 to 12 months ago.
Yeah, they absolutely had to diversify, one because of inflation, and two because of the resource availability out there. So not every single supplier is able to supply all the things that they were used to getting. So they have to be much more strategic on who they send their business to and where they do their procurement. You have to be a lot more strategic. You can't just have multiple suppliers. You need to control it, streamline it, and make sure you're with the one that aligns with your business.
Well, and not only that, I mean, when you've got multiple suppliers as well, you've got multiple different systems that you're working with. Like it's kind of like that domino effect. You bring on one new supplier and it affects all the different areas, including cybersecurity and
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. So yes, diversify, but you're right. You've got to do it very smartly. Now, you work at SDI. How does SDI working, like how do you work with your clients to help them tackle some of the issues that you talked about in your presentation?
So at SDI, I think one of the things we do is we're agile. We have expansive visibility into what's happening in the market. We understand all the volatility that our members are seeing or our clients are seeing. So one of the things that we like to do is we like to leverage data and analytics, which I believe is the route that everybody's going to. So we like to leverage that to identify any maybe hidden spend inefficiencies, use it for demand forecasting, maybe for operational improvement. So as our company, since it reaches out across multiple organizations, we're able to see those benchmarks. We're able to do comparative analysis that matches peer to peer and help our members or our clients by providing the best practices that we see across the industries out there that meet their needs.
Yeah, and I want to let everybody know we've just put in the comments the link for you to be able to download your very own copy for those best practices in MRO supply chain for 2024. So head over to the comments, click that link, download your copy because I think it's more of what you shared in your presentation that's going to be in that sort of ebook, right?
Yes,
I love
definitely.
that. Okay. So my next question for you is, you talked about cutting costs, but we also talked about maintaining the number of suppliers that you have. But what I think we also need to talk about is maintaining quality levels as well. So how do you think that organizations can find the balance between those cost cutting measures that are sort of the pressure coming down from above, but also maintaining quality levels as well?
So this is kind of something that they would have to, you need to put a new analysis in place. You need to make sure that you have achievable measures that you can monitor, and you can continuously monitor them. So you want to have standards for your suppliers. Yes, you want, cost is important, but you need to have the standards for your suppliers. You need to see the supplier performance. For example, it may be the same product, but it may take 2 weeks to have the item that you need, and you just don't have that amount of time. So measuring your supplier performance to maintain that quality and measuring the cost. Standardize your contracts, review your contracts, understand your contracts, and make sure that they meet those measurements that you're looking for to maintain the quality without sacrificing, and monitor it immediately, but long term as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you need to do it several times, right? It's not something that you can just go back to and look at once a year. You kind of need to look at it. Is it like, would you say quarterly, or are we thinking like monthly? Because that's a lot.
That's a lot, but at SDI, it's very client specific. I will tell you, some of the clients and some of our members quarterly helps us be proactive for them and to make those agile changes as we need to. There are some that go through it much quicker, have a lot more spend, have a lot more Mavericks, and that we need to keep an eye on much more frequently and partner with them to capture that and to adjust to those changes much quicker. If we let that go for a quarter, it might be considerable to that one organization. So by making it, as we said, through the cooperative, member centric and by member voice, then we can also adjust to those monitoring needs of the clients.
Right. That totally makes sense. Now, one of the words that I've kind of been hearing throughout 2024, even back in 2023, is visibility. And I've been talking about visibility in a variety of different ways, supply chain, logistics, but let's talk about procurement specific right now. And what do you think the role of visibility or increased visibility can play in when you're a procurement leader or your procurement teams? How does it make them more efficient? How does it help them work through some of these challenges?
So I think one key importance of visibility, it helps you with that change management, which is very difficult. But visibility is not just around cost, how much am I spending? Visibility is around demand forecasting or anticipating supply chain shortages or anticipating market changes. So visibility is quite broad. Visibility is providing that feedback and information around your procurement transformation strategy to your key stakeholders and your key leaders. They have a lot more involvement in it. So use the visibility within your procurement transformation strategy around cost, market changes, shortages, but use that same visibility to provide that information transfer to your key stakeholders so you get that added executive level support that you need.
And it's so important. I mean, I was talking about digital transformation with somebody just a couple of weeks ago, and they said that it is 20% technology and 80% change management and culture and all of that, all of that fun stuff that comes with it. So if you're thinking about digital transformation being only about technology, think again.
Yeah.
You've got to get all of that right before you even implement or think about implementing technology. Now, for anybody who is watching, I want to know what your top challenges are when it comes to purchasing. Is inflation your number one threat? What does that look like? And I also want to know where you're tuning in from. So make sure to put those in the comments, even if you don't have a question. If you have a question, now's the time to get it in to the comments so that we can address those as we go forward with this discussion today. Now, one of the key things that you mentioned in your presentation is data, right? I feel like we've been talking about data for a long time. And I feel like if we don't have our data houses in order at this point, in 2024, I feel like, we really need to get on that for 2025. And there's only a couple months left. So how can organizations get their data houses in order so they're using, and I think this is important to note, like accurate information, because you can't make cost management decisions without using accurate information. And sometimes that information is, a spelling mistake. which is crazy. That can throw everything off.
So I love that you say that there, that you start off with the accurate information, because that would probably be my number one thing, is go in there and clean your data. And how do you do that? You probably need somebody dedicated to go in there and clean the clean the data. Start with clean data. Inaccurate data, even with spelling mistakes, can really impact your bottom line when you're trying to do a cost savings initiative, because you are missing a considerable percentage of spend, especially when the non-repeatable spend within MRO and indirect spend is the hardest to monitor. So start with clean data. Another thing I would suggest, especially like you said, trying to get on board for 2025, and there's still people that are working towards that, find a source that can provide closer to real-time data for you. Being able to monitor that real-time data is so important. It helps you streamline, control, and standardize your procurement efforts. You can standardize who you source and what you source with that real-time data. Not saying that data that's a month or 2 months old is no longer useful. It certainly is, but you need to be extremely conscientious of it. Pay attention, and like we talked before, that's one of those kind of things that you want to monitor consistently with data.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things when I think about getting data houses in order and having accurate data, almost feel like we have to have a legend for the whole company, because we need to be on the same page as to how to spell
Yeah.
something. And most people don't even know, like in Canada, we put U's all over the place, like OUR
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
lot of different things, where, Americans do not. So if you've got global teams that are working within the data sets, and that's kind of where the spelling really comes into play. And everybody might be laughing at me because I'm talking about spelling when it comes to data, but I almost feel like that's one of the number one places to start, is how are you spelling words that correspond with your inventory.
We see it all the time. It's one of those things. If you don't have a dedicated team, or if you don't understand that the misspelling can affect the data sources and the ability to aggregate certain pieces of data, if you don't know that, then you're missing out a lot of savings opportunities there too. So dedicating that team to clean your data, that's critical.
Well, and one example I'll give, because you guys are probably all thinking that I'm crazy here, but the spelling of checks. So CHECKS is how you spell it. And
Yeah.
then here we spell it CHEQUES. And
Oh.
I've actually had to adopt sort of the American way to spell checks, because nobody knows what the hell I'm talking about when I put a Q in there.
I would wonder too. I would think it was a different language.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, what language is she speaking right now? Or maybe that's because I graduated French immersion, and maybe it's because I grew up writing a lot of words out in French. Who knows? That's something that I need to deal with another day. So let's talk about that technology, right? Because we've talked about data, we've talked about the challenges, we've talked about impacts. What do you think the types of technology should be that organizations are looking at to help them with all of this? Because we're talking about a few different things, right? Data house in order, managing spend, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm sure there's a few different versions of that.
Yes, and you do need to have a data source where you can reflect back on month over month or year over year. All of that, those important benchmarks to analyze. But I think I would have to say that companies are going to want to nowadays invest in the analytic platforms that do spend tracking, maybe a cloud-based solution that offers, like I said, real-time insights for these sources. And are you surprised if I say AI powered models for forecasting?
I don't think anything around AI is going to surprise me
Yeah.
anymore.
So I would say if they have an AI powered model that can help them with their demand forecasting or market changes to immediately respond to those changes instead of have the lag and find out a little later and get in a bind. So I would say those are very, very important. You want them to, like I said, highlight any potential disruptions in the market, identify, maybe proactively identifying cost cutting opportunities and initiatives for you, those types of data sources, but certainly some strong spend tracking data sources, AI powered data sources, maybe some cloud storage data sources as well.
Yeah, and Neil's comment brings up a really good point, and he talks about how inflationary price increases have led to a lot of layoff activity. And so this is a very, very important topic, not only to the organization themselves, to the economy, but also to the people that work for those organizations, in respect to the fact that the procurement teams purchasing the corporate executives really have to take this and make sure that they're doing everything that they can, obviously, because layoff is not necessarily something that anybody wants to do.
No, and many of those procurement team members and leaders are now stretched beyond what they used to be. So by having those very strong data resources, it can minimize all the extra time that they put into pulling their data together in an Excel spreadsheet, trying to assemble those business cases and reports that they're giving to their executive leadership. So having those stronger data sources and investing in those now helps with managing the bandwidth where they're already stretched as procurement team members.
Yeah, and making the best decisions for the organization and the people who work within it as well. So, talking about success, because I'm always curious as to how do we measure success against some of the topics that we're talking about today? Are there, how do they measure success? And are there specific metrics that they should be using to make sure that they are on the right track? And how often are we measuring this?
So that's very, very interesting that you ask that. Nowadays, many of the procurement team and procurement leaders work with their executive leadership to set annual goals, to set those success KPIs that they're going to meet by the end of the year for savings initiatives. They're also participating in sustainability now with their companies. So that's another measure that they want to look at. Some of the have a strong influence in their social responsibility. So those are some of the measures that we look at. Of course, you want to look at savings percentages or improvement in your turnaround times and the logistics. So of course, those are part of the measures, but now it's much, much larger, and especially at the beginning of the year, because our procurement leaders are part of the strategic goals for the organization as a whole. And again, like I said, that's where you start pulling the sustainability, social responsibility, those kind of measures too.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because whenever I'm talking to Frances Edmonds, she's the head of sustainability over at HP Canada. She always says that sustainability starts with procurement.
Mm-hmm.
And she feels like that is such an important thing to say, and sort of like remember as procurement leaders and as supply chain leaders, that that is a really great place for us to be able to start with those sustainability practices. So we talked about change management. We talked about how it's kind of 80% of that digital transformation. Talk to us about how organizations can prioritize that change management to ensure that the broader changes that are needed within procurement are both understood and implemented across teams. And this is really important, right? Because I feel like sometimes when we're talking internally, we've got acronyms and ways to talk about different things, and it doesn't translate well if they're not necessarily in our department or in our teams and working with us on a daily basis.
Absolutely. So what needs to happen generally for that change management transformation, which we know it's probably easier to go out and buy new data than it is to bring change management within an organization. But I think one thing that they should start off with is create your message of why you need this change management. Be very specific in what is important to the organization, what your strategic objectives and goals are, and how you're aligning with the organization's goals. Create that message behind why for the change management, and then get behind, disseminate that message, maybe create smaller procurement teams that can communicate that message throughout the company. Start with that executive leadership support and buy-in, and help it trickle down through there. But communication is absolutely key on change management. But unless you have your change management message defined, you're going to find it very difficult to do that change management.
It's so true. Everybody who's going to be rolling out that change management needs to be on the same page and have the right messaging. It's almost like marketing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've got to have the right marketing message for everybody to really understand what they're in for and why they should click the attend button and all that kind of stuff. So that's really interesting. Now, just if anybody in the audience has any questions for Miriam, please let us know, because we are coming to the end of the discussion. But I also want to remind you that there is a link to so that you can download your copy of Critical Procurement Best Practices for the MRO Supply Chain in 2024. We want to make sure that you're getting your copy. If you're over on my personal LinkedIn, I'll be updating that just after we end this live. But if you're on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn, you have access, I believe, to that link right now. So go and click that, because we want to make sure you have that. And remember, if you have any questions, now is the time to do it. Now, my last question for you is, what do you think we can expect from 2025? I mean, this is sort of the question, like, get out your crystal ball, tell me all of your predictions for 2025, which, realistically is not realistic. But if you were to think about 2025 and what procurement leaders, professionals, teams should be thinking about, I know this is titled, inflation, purchasing's number one threat. Is it still going to be that number one threat into 2025? What do we need to think about and do?
Well, don't take your eye off of that ball. Let's just put it that way. Definitely don't take your eye off that ball. But let's think about how to manage it with adoption of predictive analytics. So it can help, like I said before, manage market changes or demand forecasting for your organization. So I would say certainly adopt predictive analytics, certainly adopt those AI solutions, because it's probably going to have some of that resource for you as you need it. Think about the cooperative purchasing organizations. Cooperative purchasing is always adjusting to market shifts and changes, has the collaboration of the suppliers, has the insights from expertise throughout all those industries pooled together, and can work to create those best practices. So take advantage of it. Take advantage of that. It really doesn't cost you anything. There's just a massive collaboration between all of those organizations, and a benefit to suppliers and members. And then, if you can use your data visualization, those insights, keep it at your core. Think not just let's save money right now, immediate saving, but think long-term goals throughout the year. Set realistic goals, but be agile. 2025, you got to be agile. There's going to be some changes that you're not going to plan for. So make sure that you have that in your tool bag as well.
Now, I want to ask you, that cooperative pricing, is that for everybody?
Yes. So the wonderful thing is, think about this. Think about all those people shop at Costco. So you know what Costco says to the suppliers? Hey, if you want all these people to come see it in one spot, you better negotiate good pricing for my store, because I promise they're going to come in here and see it. Now, if I went somewhere else instead of Costco and bought the same thing, I'm probably going to pay more because I went there by myself. So the great thing about the cooperative purchasing is we have the industry of members that are all looking for that savings. They're all being challenged. It's something they need to do. And the suppliers are so happy to have access to our members, and they're so happy to hear what our members need. What is their need? What are their goals? Because they don't necessarily have the bandwidth to do that either. So we're able to sit in the middle and provide that collaboration between the two entities, and streamline things for them, make it best practices.
Well, and especially for small to medium-sized businesses, because it takes a lot of time, money, and energy and resources to try to vet a supplier.
Absolutely, takes a lot of resources. And the wonderful thing with the cooperative is you pretty much have a dedicated point of contact in the cooperative, that if you don't have the bandwidth to go find something on your own, or there's some unique challenge that you're facing at the moment, utilize that person within the cooperative. That's what they're there for. They're to be help to you, period.
And what kind of suppliers are in that cooperative? Sorry, I know I'm asking all these questions. I was like, that was our last question, but no, apparently not.
No. So we have some general industrial suppliers in the cooperative. We have electrical suppliers. We have power transmission bearings. We have services, all kinds of services, from security services to shipping services. So it's broad. And the thing is, with a cooperative, as compared to a group purchasing organization, with a cooperative, you have access to anybody that meets your need. You don't have to have everybody. There's no commitment to everybody. There's just what meets your company's need. You have access to that. And if you don't see something in there that you need, you work with a cooperative, because we take your voice as a member and we bring that to you. So we make sure that, because it's probably more than one member that has that need. It's just one voiced it to us.
That's such a great resource.
Yeah. So there's plenty of opportunity for them for savings, standardization, and streamlining their spend, and give them the visibility into spend, because the data is reported to the cooperative. So we can aggregate all your different suppliers into one spot, and you can see your spend.
And benchmarking data, I would imagine.
Yes, and benchmarking is great for those small to mid-sized companies.
How does that help them?
So think about this. I'm going to go out and I'm just going to buy whatever I want shoes-wise, and I look just as good as this other lady, but she didn't spend as much as I did. Maybe I'm not aligned with my peers, and I can see I'm way off from my peers, and there's opportunities where I can actually save money and have a little bit more in my pocket than just because I don't know what's out there. So the benchmarking with your peers is very important. Now, there are going to be unique cases for companies that say, I appreciate the benchmarking, but this is different within my organization. And it's great because they get that visibility and they get to make those decisions on their own, what absolutely fits their organization.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's really all about the choices in front of us, and we can only make the choices with the data that we have. There's not necessarily a perfect option or a perfect choice. And that is actually going to change all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to change all the time. And so I think that that's great in the fact that if we only know what we know, and if we can be aligned on the data and have that benchmarking information and say, oh, wait a second, I'm actually paying a little bit too much for this particular thing, service, product, what have you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that very easily without having to go to several different sources. I mean, think about how much time you're going to save for that anyways.
And remember, internally within the cooperative, the points of contact and the subject matter experts in the cooperative review this all the time. So when they work specifically with a member, they can say, I did notice there is a savings opportunity for you. And I noticed it because I had the information from other members. And we can bring that to you. And it's up to you on where you want to go with it.
I need those kind of alerts in my like coupon apps and all that kind of stuff because
I know.
I can't control it. I can't keep on top of all of that. All right. Before we go, what is one thing that you would like the audience sort of walking away thinking about or taking action on as they leave this discussion today?
So explore beyond trying to manage it on your own. Know that there are all kinds of resources for you. And like I mentioned before, there is a difference between group purchasing organizations and cooperatives. So one may fit your need better than another, but explore it. Don't try to be like one person on an island by yourself. There's
Mhm.
so many opportunities to help your organization, and it makes everybody as a collective successful, makes the cooperative successful, the supplier successful, and you as an organization successful.
And the industry.
And the industry, definitely the
Yeah.
industry. Yeah.
Well, so that brings us to the end of today's LinkedIn Live. Miriam, thank you so much. I mean, that was really fascinating just to explore, inflation, exactly how we mitigate it, and of course, some of the key themes around technology, data, cooperation, collaboration, plus a lot of like practical tips and advice for professionals to take back to their own organizations to tackle some of these pressures head on. Now, remember, you can go and download your essential guide to unlocking excellence in MRO procurement. Head over to the link that we've put in the comments. If you're over on my personal, I'll be putting that in just a minute. And thank you to all of you for listening, watching, and for all your amazing commentary. It's clear that this is an issue that impacts a lot of people. So it's great to see you taking so much from this session and really enjoying it. So thanks again, everybody. Thanks to Miriam, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everyone.